Welcome to the Afterspin, opinions from thought leaders in our state. I want to ask John Hood and Cash Michaels, a law passed by the legislature would allow virtual charter schools to increase their enrollment up to 20% a year. The virtual charters have been labeled low performing every year since they came under the state's testing program. Was Governor Cooper right to veto? Why did the legislature see fit to pass this legislation? And do you think they'll try to override it, John?
I think they will try to override. I think they wanted to pass it because there's a lot of demand for the virtual online academies, both the district or the state DPI-run stuff and the charter schools, and there are some other options in the private and homeschool sector that are using virtual. I think that it is absolutely legitimate to ask the question about the educational quality of the services being provided.
Outcomes.
However, it's also worth saying it's difficult to test, because the problem is that you've got lots of kids who opt for this model have, in some cases, special needs or they're far behind. It's challenging. This actually reinforces the point that we make regarding the grading system, that you can't just look at the outcomes of tests and make clear determinations about the quality of what's being delivered, because you have to compare it against what would have happened without. So you need essentially, like in the grading our schools model, you need a sort of a where are they testing and a growth measure. In this case, we need a more sophisticated, in my view, evaluation of how the students are doing versus the alternative arrangements. I don't think that answer is available yet.
Cash, this is an accountability issue with a lot of people, that they don't feel like these virtual charters are very accountable. Where do you stand on this?
I agree with the governor's veto for sure, because you need to measure, okay, we have you, now what are you doing? We have the average student doing what, D's at the very best. The legislature says, hey, look, we have struggling students here, so this will help them. We have no evidence of that. We've had them since 2015, meaning both academies, if I'm not mistaken. But thus far, we've seen nothing to say, yes, let's invest more time and more money, and our North Carolina Department of Instruction should further invest itself in this as well. More importantly, we're not getting good reports from other states that have employed these virtual academies. So I think to expand them when you have no evidence to show that the kids that they're working with, and I think it's just over 2,000 or so with each, are really accomplishing anything.
Well, I mean, let's go back to when these virtual academies were created to start off with. If you remember, we had a hard time finding two virtual academies to be able to do it.
Two companies.
Two companies,
yeah.
Yes. John, a news story this past week about teachers being laid off. Tell us about that in the virtual education academies.
Well, there were some teachers that would be employed on a temporary status, but they weren't temporary. They overstayed the period of time that would be allowed. So that's the nature of the problem.
Sort of like calling contract employees.
It's not the same thing, but it is in a similar vein.
They're related.
It's a classification problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
So does that further impact? I mean, if they're not going to be employed, what's that going to do so far as the virtual academies?
Who is in charge of all of this? Who's dotting I's and crossing T's? If they can't do that, and then on top of that, we're not getting any results from the students involved, then what's the use?
Yeah, this is sounding like an Abbott and Costello who's on first routine, isn't it? Well, thank you for watching the Afterspin. We'll have more video all during the week on ncspin.com.